Hello there everyone. Starting off this look, I have clean and moisturized skin, and then I'm applying the Makeup Forever Step 1 Smoothing Primer just to my T-zone to smooth out my pores and create a nice smooth canvas for foundation. Next, to brighten the darkness under my eyes, I'm applying the Becca Under Eye Brightening Corrector in a patting motion using my ring finger, and then I'm blending it out with a damp Real Techniques Complexion sponge. For foundation, I'm using the Revlon ColorStay foundation for combination to oily skin in the shade Buff, and I'm blending it into my skin using that same damp Real Techniques complexion sponge. I personally don't have combination or oily skin, even though I use this formula. I'm more on the normal to dry side, but I like this combination oily formula much better than the formula for dry skin because it has better coverage and it lasts so much longer. To conceal any remaining darkness under my eyes and a few blemishes around my face, I'm using the Makeup Forever Full Coverage Concealer in the shade 1, and I'm blending it out with that same Real Techniques sponge. To set everything in place, I'm using the Mercier Translucent Setting Powder. Under my eyes, I use a small but still fluffy brush to pat the powder under my eye, and then I swipe it back and forth to blend it out. I'm also using this powder to set the rest of my face, and I use that same technique. First, I pat the powder onto my skin, and then I blend it out. I found that if I start swiping the brush across my face right away, the foundation can slide around and it's really irritating. So by pressing the powder into the skin, this sets the foundation and it keeps it in place, and then you can buff away the excess. For bronzer, I'm using Hoola bronzer by Benefit with the little turquoise brush that comes with it, followed by the Morphe M439 on my cheekbones and my temples. And then to contour, I'm using the Sephora contour powder in the shade Tranquil, and I'm only using this on my cheeks to create the illusion of a shadow. For a blush, I'm using Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. To highlight the cheekbones, I'm using Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector in the shade Champagne Pop. This is Becca's collaboration with Jaclyn Hill, and I'm applying this with a slightly damp Morphe 501 brush. I'm sweeping this along the tops of my cheekbones, very lightly on the top of the arch of my brow, on the tip of my nose, and lightly on my cupid's bow. Last but not least, for the skin, I want to contour my nose. I'm using that little turquoise brush, and I'm taking a small amount of Hoola bronzer and lightly pressing it along either side of my nose to make the nose look more thin and straight, and then I'm blending it out with a powder brush. I decided to include my eyebrow routine today since I haven't included that in a while. So to fill them in, I'm using the Sephora Retractable Eyebrow Pencil in the shade Midnight Brown. I start by defining the lower edge of my brow, and then I use short strokes to mimic the appearance of hair and fill in the body of my brow. Throughout the process, I stop and I use a spoolie to blend out the product and check out where we need to add more product or change the shape. I know the angle looks a little bit weird on how I film this, but I promise my brows look normal, as you'll see in just a minute. To fill the sparse areas of my brow in a little bit more, I use the L'Oreal Brow Artist Sculptor pencil in the shade Brunette, and to follow that, I use the L'Oreal Brow Artist Gel in the shade Brunette to hold my brows up and in place all day. My brows naturally grow down, so if I skip this step and don't set them, they will fall throughout the day and not look so good. The eyeshadow part of this look is very simple, as I wanted the focus to be on the lashes and the lips. So to start out, I'm sweeping Hoola bronzer back and forth into my crease using a Morphe M330 brush. Next, I'm adding a few eye drops to MAC pigment in the shade Naked, and I'm rubbing this onto my lid with a flat brush. The reason I add the eye drops is to help the pigment adhere to my lid better, and because it makes the pigment more concentrated and intense. To add a touch of depth to the outer corner, I'm using the gold shade from the Blushed Nudes palette with a Sigma E25 brush. And for the lower lash line, I'm using a pencil brush to blend Hoola bronzer right along my lash line. And for this lash-centric look, I chose the House of Lashes Boudoir lashes. These are part of their premium line, and while I have to say they are so fluffy and pretty, they do have a thick band, which makes them a little bit harder to apply and more uncomfortable. To apply the lashes, I use the House of Lashes glue and let it get tacky. This is a super important step that so many people skip, and I used to skip when I was a beginner to false lashes. If you put the lashes on straight after applying the glue, they'll be slipping and sliding all over your eyelid, which is definitely not what you want. But if you let the glue get tacky, it will stick to your lash line when you put it on. Once the glue is tacky, I set the center of the lashes right on top of my lash line and then stick down the inner and outer corners. Sometimes it's easier to use tweezers, and sometimes it's just easier to use your finger. It really just depends on the day and how you're feeling. Then I lightly crimp my natural lashes and the falsies together with my eyelash curler, and then finally I apply a thin coat of mascara so the two blend together. And finally, last but not least, the bold lips. I'm starting with MAC lip liner in the shade Whirl to line and fill in my lips. Using a lip liner with a liquid lipstick definitely isn't a necessary step, but I like to do it and use the liner as a guide for applying my liquid lipstick.
Feel your energy when our eyes touch, so familiar deep inside, like you were already mine.
Then for lipstick, I'm using the Kat Von D Everlasting Liquid Lipstick in the shade Bauhaus 5 or Bauhaus. Not really sure how you pronounce it, but it will be down in the description bar below. This liquid lipstick isn't completely opaque, so I like to use 2 coats to get a nice even layer all over my lips. And that concludes this bold lips and lashes tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with another tutorial.